Extra minutes.
What makes the R-44 a killer where other helicopters aren't?
The helicopter has got a aluminum fuel tank with no bladder in it, and it has two fuel tanks on either side of the helicopter that are connected with rigid lines. And if any deformation or movement occurs, it can cause those lines to break and rupture fuel. It also has a vent tube which has no means of preventing fuel from escaping in the event that the helicopter tips over on its side.
It's extraordinary that Robinson has been allowed to get away with this.
It has been, and it's been unfortunate. And I've been advocating since 2006 for them to change their fuel system design when my client, Ellen Nemick's husband, was killed in Fredericksburg, Texas.
But if a helicopter crashes and catches fire, isn't that just a risk you take when you get in a chopper?
No. There are many, many helicopters out there that do not have the problem with the post-crash fires like the Robinson. It is the most deadly helicopter in an otherwise survivable crash. You could have just a very small incident where you catch a skid on something as you're taking off, and if the helicopter rolls over at hardly any forward speed, it can result in fatalities to all aboard.
So in most of the fatalities we've seen involving R-44s, they're survivable in other helicopters.
The minor impact collisions would be survivable in most of the other helicopters because, as those manufacturers pointed out to the regulatory authorities when the 15-meter drop test was being contemplated, they have been designing their helicopters to survive a 15-meter drop since the 1960s. Robinson was the only manufacturer that opposed that standard because they knew their helicopters couldn't meet it.
The R-44s with the faulty fuel tanks have now been grounded in Australia, but that's not the end of the problem, is it?
Unfortunately, it's not. The R-44 is just an outgrowth or a grown-up R-22. They both had the same fuel system in them. The R-44 fuel system carries more fuel in it, but it has the same problems that the R-22 system, which was the genesis of this whole design. And yet the regulators have done nothing on the R-22. And I find it astounding that they can acknowledge that there's such a problem with the 44s that the fleet has to get grounded, yet they have done absolutely nothing to the numerous R-22s that are flying all over Australia.
Do you have any idea why they've just ignored that issue?
I would love to know the answer to that question.